Learnly English Podcast.
Welcome, deep divers. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating journey. We're going to be sifting through observations about language, specifically English, our mission, to try and understand why certain, let's call them linguistic challenges, are so common for learners, and what these might reveal about, well, human communication itself. It's pretty adaptable stuff. We've gathered insights from, everyday conversations, stories from friends, colleagues, even our own learning experiences, actually. You'll hear about everything from those really tricky tenses to the tiny little words that somehow manage to change everything.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here, I think, is that we're not just looking at, errors in quotation marks. We're looking at the logic learners are applying, which is often heavily influenced by their native languages. And English itself, well, it presents its own unique challenges, doesn't it?
It really does.
So it raises this important question. What does it actually mean to master a language? Especially when the real goal is connection, not just like perfect grammar.
Exactly. Connection, not perfection.
So if you've ever felt tripped up by English, or maybe you're just curious about how language works sort of under the hood, let's unpack this. Okay, so if we're talking about the logic learners apply, where does that logic maybe collide most dramatically with English? For a lot of people, I suspect it's right there with time and tenses. It's this tangled web. It can feel completely arbitrary sometimes.
Oh, definitely. It's a core challenge. And that's because so many languages structure the concept of time very differently from English. Our, you could almost say, obsession with when something happened and exactly how it connects to the present moment. That's not universal at all. So direct translation of time expressions. That often leads to these patterns that, to a native English speaker, sound like mistakes.
Yeah, I had a German neighbor once, lovely guy, but he'd always say, I am living here since 10 years.
Yeah.
And you know exactly what he means, of course. But to a native ear, it just sounds a little off.
The English way is, I have been living here for 10 years. It's that subtle thing, isn't it? That difference between an action starting in the past and continuing, or having relevance now.
Exactly. Versus one that's just, done, finished. And we see a really similar pattern with the simple past versus the present perfect. I had a friend from Mexico, Carlos, great guy. He might say something like, yesterday I have gone to the movies. Again, meaning perfectly clear.
Right.
But standard English usually wants, I went. For that completed past action, I have gone, tends to imply something just finished. Or maybe its effect is still felt now. Like I've gone to the movies so I can tell you about it.
And then there's the opposite problem sometimes. My friend Linda, she's from China, brilliant person, but sometimes she'll say, I go to Paris last month. Using the simple present for something that clearly happened in the past, it sounds quite jarring.
That's a fantastic example. And it often comes up because in, say, Mandarin, verb forms don't really change for tense in the same way. You add time markers, words like yesterday or last month, but the verb itself often stays the same. So the whole idea of conjugating a verb to show past time, it's a completely new concept.
Oh, okay.
So the learner is applying a perfectly logical system from their own language, but it just doesn't map one-to-one onto English.
That makes sense. And what about those state verbs and the continuous tenses? My neighbor Anna from Russia, she sometimes says things like, I am knowing the answer.
Yeah, I am knowing or I am understanding. That's a classic one. Verbs like know, understand, even have when it means possession.
Yeah.
They describe states of being, right?
Yeah.
Not ongoing actions.
Right.
But generally, they don't take that ing form. The underlying idea maybe is that states are kind of inherently continuous. So adding the continuous marker feels a bit redundant in English.
But then English throws a curveball, doesn't it? Because we absolutely say, I'm having dinner, that's an action. But saying, I'm having a car for possession just sounds weird. What's the subtle thing there that trips people up?
That's a great question. And it really does show how inconsistent English can be. I mean, the core idea holds. State verbs like know or have for possession describe ongoing conditions. I know the answer. But have is a bit of a chameleon, isn't it? When it means eat or experience, suddenly it can take the ing form.
Oh, okay.
Like I'm having dinner or I've been having problems with my computer. So it really depends on the meaning of the verb in that specific context. Which, makes it a pretty nuanced challenge for learners.
Definitely nuanced. Okay, so we've touched on grammar, these hidden rules, but language isn't just structure, is it? It's also, the physical act of speaking. What about those sounds that, no matter how hard people try, just seem to trip almost everyone up?
Right. And this brings up an interesting point. When does a pronunciation difference just sound like, a charming accent, and when does it actually get in the way of communication?
The thin sound has to be the classic example. My friend Ahmed, he'll often say, I think instead of I think, and maybe this instead of this. And honestly, everyone understands him perfectly well, but it's so distinctive, that tongue placement right between the teeth. It just feels really unnatural for a lot of speakers.
It really is. And what's fascinating, something most native speakers don't even realize, is that there are actually two thin sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's the unvoiced one where just air passes, like in think or bath.
Huh.
And then there's the voiced one where your vocal cords vibrate, like in this or mother.
Huh. I never consciously thought about that vibration.
Most don't. But you're right. Generally, mispronouncing thin rarely causes actual confusion. The human ear is pretty amazing at adapting. Context does a lot of heavy lifting.
True, most of the time. But sometimes pronunciation can completely change the meaning, can it? I heard this story, maybe apocryphal, I don't know, about someone ordering in a restaurant trying to say, I'd like some rice. But it came out as, I'd like some lice.
Oh, no. That's a critical one, isn't it? A perfect example of how vowel sounds, that short E versus the long E, can be absolutely crucial for clarity.
Definitely don't want lice with your dinner.
No, indeed. It's a classic minimal pair, like ship and sheep. These little distinctions matter.
Right, ship versus sheep, that's another one. Creates totally different images. I also remember my college roommate from Japan, he really struggled with R and L sounds. He'd talk about listening to lock music instead of rock music.
Yeah, R and L are notoriously tricky for speakers of languages like Japanese or Korean, where they might not be distinct sounds or function differently. The underlying challenge there is often auditory perception. If your native language doesn't distinguish between those sounds, your brain might literally not be tuned to hear the difference easily, which makes producing them correctly even harder.
That makes sense. I do recall one time, though, where the confusion felt a bit more serious. A friend of mine, she was at the doctor's office, and she kept saying, I have pain in my back, but she was pronouncing back more like bag. B-A-G.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, the doctor was apparently really confused for a minute, trying to figure out why her bag was hurting.
Wow. Well, that definitely highlights how important crystal clear pronunciation can be in critical contexts, like medical situations. The stakes are just higher there. Precision matters more than just ordering dinner, obviously.
Absolutely. Okay, now here's something I find really fascinating. Even if you get all the individual sounds right, the stress you put on a word can instantly make you sound, well, foreign.
Yes. Word stress. It's such a crucial element of English rhythm and melody. And you're right. It's one of those things native speakers absorb subconsciously, almost like breathing. We don't realize we're doing it usually until someone asks us to explain the rule.
Yeah.
And often we can't. But it's fundamental to sounding natural.
I work with a French colleague, and she often says hotel instead of hotel. Phonetically, the sounds are fine, but the stress just lands differently. And it's not totally random, is it? There are some patterns, sort of?
There are patterns, yes, but with many exceptions, which is classic English.
Right.
For instance, a lot of two-syllable nouns are stressed on the first syllable. Think table, window, P-E-ople.
Right.
But then you get exceptions like guitar or polymus. And two-syllable verbs often stress the second syllable, like record or present. But again, exceptions exist. It's about the overall rhythm.
And then it gets even trickier with longer words or words in the same family, right? Like photograph,
Right.
infant photographer, and photography. Same root, totally different stress patterns. How is anyone supposed to learn that systematically?
It's incredibly difficult to learn explicitly as an adult. It's usually absorbed through massive amounts of listening exposure, ideally from childhood. The key thing to understand is that word stress in English isn't just like an optional decoration. It's often part of the word's identity. It can even change the meaning or the word class, like R-chord the noun versus record the verb. That concept doesn't exist in all languages.
Wow. And then there's sentence stress. This just blows my mind sometimes. You take a simple sentence like, I didn't say he stole the money. Same words, but depending on what you emphasize, totally different meaning. How does that even work?
It's a perfect demonstration of prosody, isn't it? How the melody and rhythm of speech carry meaning beyond the words themselves. So if you stress, I didn't say he stole the money, someone else said it.
Right.
I didn't say he stole the money. Maybe I implied it, wrote it, gestured it.
Oh.
I didn't say he stole the money, someone else did. I didn't say he stole the money. Maybe he borrowed it or found it. I didn't say he stole the money. He stole something else, maybe the jewels. It's not just about sounding native. It's fundamental to conveying your precise meaning and intention. It's a really powerful, though often subconscious, communication tool.
It really is. Okay, shifting gears slightly, it's incredible how our native language kind of subtly influences the English we speak, isn't it? Sometimes without us even noticing. It's like we carry this linguistic blueprint around.
Absolutely. It highlights just how deeply ingrained our first language structures are. When you learn a new language, your brain often tries to sort of map the new vocabulary onto the grammar rules it already knows really well. And when those rules don't quite align between the languages, that's when these distinctions pop up. It's not really a mistake in the learner's logic. It's more like a direct transfer of a pattern that works perfectly well in their L1.
Oh, definitely. Sentence structure, word order. My friend Kim, she's from Korea. Sometimes she'll say something structured like, yesterday to the store I went.
Right.
Which makes perfect sense because Korean often puts the verb at the very end of the sentence. So that structure feels completely normal to her.
Exactly. Grammatically, in her internal system, it's sound. It just deviates from the typical English subject-verb-object order we expect. Similarly, my friend Sophia from Spain, she sometimes asks, how you are, instead of how are you?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Because Spanish doesn't always require that subject-verb inversion for questions. So a direct translation feels intuitive, even though English needs the flip.
And adjective placement, too. Spanish speakers often say a car red instead of a red car, directly translating un coche rojo. Again, perfectly logical if you're thinking in Spanish first.
These are all classic examples of what linguists call interlanguage phenomena. It's the learner's developing English system, and it's naturally influenced by their native language. It's actually a predictable stage in language acquisition.
That's interesting. And then there's politeness. Wow, does that vary? I had a German colleague once who could sound quite abrupt in English. He might say, give me the report, which apparently can be perfectly polite in a German workplace context. But in English, oof, it sounds demanding.
Yes, English speakers tend to use a lot of indirectness, especially with requests. We layer on the could you possibly, or would you mind, or I was wondering if.
Our obsession with softening requests.
It really is a feature. This focus on sort of mitigating the imposition is a big cultural and therefore linguistic hurdle. The underlying value might be different, avoiding direct command versus valuing efficiency, perhaps.
And then there are the sneaky ones. False friends, words that look or sound alike across languages but mean totally different things. I've stumbled over so many of these myself.
Oh, they are particularly tricky, aren't they? Because that similarity gives you this false sense of confidence. You think you know the word, so you use it boldly, but incorrectly.
Yeah.
They can be harder to unlearn.
Totally. Like the word realize. My Spanish-speaking friends sometimes use it to mean carry out or complete a task. They'll say, I need to realize this project by Friday.
Right, from Spanish realizar.
Exactly. But in English, realize just means to understand or become aware of something. It's a complete meaning mismatch.
Or another common one from Spanish is actual. In Spanish, actual means current or present day.
Oh.
So a learner might talk about the actual president when they mean the current president. In English, actual means something more like real or genuine, so it creates a totally different nuance.
Sneaky indeed. Okay, let's dive into, oh boy, prepositions and phrasal verbs. The bane of many learners' existence. They often seem to defy all logic.
They really do challenge the logical part of the brain, don't they? Prepositions especially. The connections often just don't translate. Why on the bus but in the car? And phrasal verbs, they function almost like independent vocabulary items, little chunks of meaning you just have to learn.
Exactly. Why on the bus, in the car? It feels completely arbitrary. I remember my friend Pietro from Italy, he used to say, I'm thinking in you.
Ah, like Italian penso a te.
Precisely. Which kind of translates to thinking to you or maybe at you. It actually seems more logical sometimes than our thinking about you.
It might seem so, yeah. But English just has its own ingrained conventions. We say thinking about, worrying about, but then it switches listening to, speaking to, writing to. There's often no single consistent rule you could apply across the board, which really makes it more of a memorization game, unfortunately, rather than applying a neat logical rule.
And phrasal verbs, good grief, they're just everywhere. And often evil, look up the word, look after the baby, look into the problem, look forward to the holiday. The meanings seem completely disconnected from look plus the preposition. Why does look up mean search? It's not logical.
It really isn't if you try to derive it from the parts. The key insight for learners, I think, is that they function more like single vocabulary items, almost like idioms. You're not supposed to combine the meaning of look and up to get search. You just have to learn the chunk look up means search. It forces a different way of learning, treating these multi-word units as distinct concepts.
And some of them have like 5 different meanings. Pick up, that can mean collect something, right? Or improve, like the economy is picking up. Or learn a skill quickly. Or give someone a ride in your car.
Exactly.
I remember my roommate once asked me to pick him up, and I was thinking, like, give him a ride somewhere. But no, he literally meant, could I physically lift him off the couch because he'd hurt his back and got stuck.
Oh, wow. That's a perfect example. It shows how these are learned as fixed chunks with specific meanings, often tied to context. Without that shared idiomatic understanding, you get these, well, amusing but genuine confusions.
Totally. Okay, then there are those tiny, tiny words. A, none, the, articles. They seem so simple, but they cause endless frustration for learners.
Yeah, and one thing that really stands out here is for speakers whose native languages just don't have articles at all, think Russian, Chinese, Japanese, many others, for them it's not just about learning the rules, it's about grasping a whole new grammatical concept. There's often no direct equivalent, so it requires a significant cognitive leap.
And even for languages that do have articles, English usage can feel really inconsistent. Like we say, I'm going to school, no article, but I'm going to the office. Why the there? Or I love music, general concept, no article, but I love the music in this movie, specific music, so you need the. What's the hidden logic? Is there any?
There's usually an underlying logic, often related to specificity and shared knowledge between the speaker and listener. School can be treated as a general institution or concept you attend, maybe, whereas the office usually refers to a specific known place.
Okay.
Similarly, music in general is abstract. But the music in this movie points to a specific, identifiable set of sounds that both people can, theoretically, access. It's about defining or pointing something out.
And geographical names are a minefield. The United States, but just France. The Netherlands, but Germany. Why the Philippines, when it's one country, even if the name sounds plural?
That's one of those areas where historical usage and pure convention play a huge role. It's really messy. Generally, the luth tends to appear before names that imply some kind of collection or multiplicity, like states, United States, lands, Netherlands meaning lowlands, or islands, Philippines, Bahamas. It's almost like a linguistic fossil record. Learners often just have to memorize these, unfortunately. There's no perfect rule.
Yeah, feels like it. And then there's the flip side. Overusing the. My friend Alex, he might say, the life is beautiful or the people are friendly.
Yeah.
When in English, for those broad general concepts, we'd normally just say, life is beautiful, people are friendly.
That's a very common pattern, dropping the article for general concepts. But as soon as you make it specific again, the usually comes back, like the people in this restaurant are friendly. Now you're talking about a specific, defined group. It's these subtle shifts in specificity and context that make articles so persistently challenging.
Absolutely. Okay, moving beyond just words and grammar, how we actually use language is so deeply tied to cultural norms, isn't it? It's a whole other layer of complexity.
It really is. And this raises a fundamental question. How much of language learning is about mastering the grammatical rules, and how much is about understanding the unspoken social rules that govern how we interact?
It feels like a huge part. I've definitely noticed, say, colleagues from cultures known for politeness.
Right.
They might frame a simple request like, I'm so very sorry to bother you, but if it's not too much trouble and only if you happen to have a moment, perhaps you could maybe consider sending the file.
Right. Very elaborate.
And in English, while polite, that level of extreme deference can actually come across as, well, uncertain or maybe even insecure. We tend to value a certain directness even within politeness.
Conversely, someone from a more direct culture might just say, I need the report now. Perfectly normal, maybe even efficient in their context. But to many English speakers, that can sound quite blunt or even rude, even if absolutely no offense was intended. It's like every culture has a slightly different politeness thermometer, calibrated differently.
That's a good analogy. And small talk. Oh my goodness, that's a big one. Most English-speaking cultures seem to require this little ritual of, how was your weekend? Weather's nice today, before you can actually get down to business. I remember trying to jump straight into a work question with a new colleague once, and you could almost feel this invisible barrier go up. He needed the small talk first.
Whereas in some other cultures, that might be seen as wasting time. Getting straight to the point is valued as efficient and respectful of the other person's time. And the classic ritual greeting, how are you? My friend Yuki from Japan, when she first arrived, was genuinely perplexed. She thought people actually wanted a detailed, honest update on her physical and emotional state every time someone asked.
Huh. Yeah, exactly. How are you isn't really a question, is it? It's more like a password. Fine, thanks, how are you? Is the expected response, not a health report.
Precisely. We perform a lot of these social rituals where the literal meaning isn't the main point, like saying, we should really get lunch sometime.
Oh, yeah, the non-invitation invitation.
Exactly. It often just means, I enjoy this conversation, or I like you, not necessarily a concrete plan to eat together next Tuesday. It's about maintaining social connection, often without firm commitment.
Navigating all that is tricky even for native speakers sometimes. Which brings us to the wild west of digital communication, where even native speakers seem to be making up the rules as they go along. How do learners even begin to navigate this constantly shifting landscape?
That's a huge question, isn't it? It really highlights how rapidly language norms are evolving, especially in digital spaces. The rules are being written and rewritten constantly, often implicitly, without any formal instruction manual. It's a moving target.
Totally. Like using a period, a full stop, at the end of a text message. To some people, especially younger ones, that can feel weirdly aggressive or overly formal.
Right. Passive-aggressive almost.
But in an email, a period is completely normal, expected even. And emoji usage.
Oh, man. I've seen emails that try to be formal, businesslike, but then are sprinkled with like 10 different smiley faces or a thumbs up. It creates this really bizarre, slightly unsettling tone sometimes.
Or the opposite. Using text speak in a professional email. Sending your boss a message like, hey, can you send me that thing, DSX, is probably not the best look.
Probably not. Learners have to somehow grasp not just the words, but the evolving sociolinguistics of each platform, the expected level of formality, the acceptable abbreviations, the emoji etiquette. It's a lot.
Yeah. And those abbreviations like for your or you for you, they're so context dependent. Texting welcome to a friend, totally fine. Writing thank you for consideration in a formal job application email, that would just be weird. Cringy, maybe.
Definitely weird. The platform and the relationship dictate everything, and each platform seems to develop its own distinct style, doesn't it? Think about the language on LinkedIn, all that I'm humbled and excited to announce stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds completely different from the often casual, sometimes argumentative, direct style you see on Twitter. Or the meme-heavy visual communication on TikTok or Instagram. It's a whole new layer of linguistic complexity to decode.
It really is.
Yeah.
So, after diving into all these nuances, all these quirks and challenges, what does it all mean? It really just highlights how incredibly messy English is, doesn't it? But also kind of fascinating, and frankly, it makes you appreciate how amazing it is that anyone manages to learn it and actually connect with people.
It does. And I think one aspect that really stands out, looking back at all these examples, is that most of the mistakes we talked about, they don't actually stop communication. If someone says, I have 25 years, maybe instead of, I am 25 years old, you still get it. You understand perfectly well they're telling you their age.
Yeah, that's true.
The core message gets through. Language fundamentally is about achieving that mutual understanding, isn't it?
That is such a crucial point. Perfect grammar, perfect pronunciation. They're maybe nice to haves, but they aren't the ultimate goal, are they? Connection is the goal. Understanding is the goal. It's not about preserving some imaginary, static, perfect version of English. Language is alive. It changes, it evolves, and our interactions constantly shape it.
And maybe this raises an important question for you listening right now. How might focusing more on connection rather than on perfection change your approach, not just to language learning perhaps, but maybe to other areas of life too? Where does that fear of getting it wrong, of not being perfect, hold you back from just engaging?
That's a great thought, absolutely. Whether you're just starting out on your English journey or you've been plugging away at it for years, try to remember that every so-called mistake is really just proof. Proof that you're trying, that you're learning, that you're growing. You're doing something genuinely incredible by engaging with another language, by building those bridges across cultures, one word, one phrase, one conversation at a time.
And speaking for both of us here, we genuinely admire anyone who takes on that challenge. It's not easy.
Not at all. Well, that's all for this deep dive. Thanks so much for exploring these linguistic quirks and complexities with us today. Keep learning, keep communicating, and maybe most importantly, keep connecting.